how did you get to know about creative personal development, the group, and what prompted you to join?
That is a really great question. And, I have been working with Kirsty now for, I guess, probably about 2 months, maybe 3 months. And I was fortunate enough to meet Kirsty actually through Morgana McCabe Allen, who is absolutely amazing. And, Morgana and I have been working together now for probably about 6 months or so. We've been working together on a book, as well as I'm also working with Kirsty on a book. So
That's wonderful. Okay.
I've been blessed.
What are that? You certainly have. My goodness. What are the books?
Well, we are working on one that is called If, and basically it's a concept of ironic fundamentalism, and that is Kirsty's idea, which is absolutely fantastic. And I really feel like the work that we're doing right now is extremely important because it's related to essentially learning how to deal with anxiety and how to basically take anxiety and to deal with it, but also to make it part of your productivity and how to convert it from nervous energy into motivational energy. And I think that that's really critical right now because I think, well, I think everyone's anxious right now, whether they'll admit it or not. I think that on a global scale, we have a higher level of anxiety than we've had in the past. And so I think more now than ever, it's super, super critical to make sure that we're creating projects like this and getting this information out. So I think we'll be looking at probably release in typically about 90 days. So super excited about that. And Kirsty is brilliant. I just absolutely adore her. And I love the way that she thinks. And it's just been a great collaboration so far.
Fantastic. When did you start?
We started, oh goodness, probably about 2.5, 3 months ago. So we've been making really good progress so far. And again, she's just fantastic. She's so smart and so brilliant and so witty, and she sees things in just such an unusual way that I really think that there are going to be a lot of people that really connect to her perspective and that are going to love the transformative information that this book is going to supply. So I'm so happy to be a part of it.
That's so wonderful. And just while we're talking about Kirsty and her fabulousness, she's recently come out as slightly more woo-woo than she says she's been pretending to be. And when you see people, like, I feel like I've always seen her as woo-woo, and I just don't know why she's denying it to the world, because the world needs that kind of fabulousness, not just right now, but always, really.
I agree all the time. And, it's kind of like one thing that I really love about working with Kirsty and also working with Morgana is that I feel like I'm being a part of projects that if I had had them 5 years ago could have changed my life. Wow. And, I really feel like this is a cause. It's a mission more than anything else to particularly help, entrepreneurs and people who are really trying to kind of find out what they want in life and, take their next steps forward. So I'm super, super, super excited about being a part of both of these projects.
Me too. Just hearing you talk about it, it's just so inspiring. I'm loving the acronym IF, Ironic Fundamentalism. For those who might not understand what the term is, can you put that into layman's terms?
Yes, basically, ironic fundamentalism specifically to, do my best to paraphrase Kirsty, and I'm going to try and get this right because I don't want to get it wrong. Basically is learning that you don't have a lot of control over some of the things that happen to you in life, but if you can take that anxiety and if you can convert it and realize that everything that happens to you, you're going to learn a lesson and you're going to be able to adjust and also become essentially a better person. If you have control over your anxiety, it actually becomes kind of like fire in the belly, if that makes any sense. It becomes a motivator instead of becoming something that, can overcome you. You overcome it. And that's something that I really, really love from the message of this book. And it's not, a woo-woo guide as much as it is a how-to. And I think that that's so important because it's really a matter of understanding, where you are and where you want to be, and then taking these steps that are going to be required to get there. And I know that that was one thing that I loved about Kirsty's model, more than anything else, is that it really provides that journey. That is so missing because there are so many books out there that are, hey, go do this, but the practical application is missing. And I really feel like the practical application is here. And I think that that is what really sets the book that we're doing apart from everything else on the bookshelves.
So how did that conversation start between the two of you? Because I feel like you're giving Kirsty a lot of credence for the idea, but there's so much that you bring to the table. What's your big exciting part in this?
Well, it's really unusual. I've been writing for years and years and years. I started writing when I was 9. I was published for the first time at the age of 9. I started working with newspapers when I was about 11 to 12. It's just something that I've done my entire life.
Amazing. And what was for the benefit of our viewers, what was your first publication at 9?
My first publication was actually a book of poetry that I published for the National Library here in the US when I was probably 9. And after that, I published about 8 books between the time that I was 9 and the time that I was about 13. So, you know, it was just back to back to back to back to back. And after that, I started doing, you know, literary magazines. I started publishing in newspapers. I worked with the AJC, which is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, when I was still in high school. I worked with a bunch of local papers as well. Wanted to pursue a career in newspaper journalism. When I got into journalism school, I really found that I felt like it was a bit of an agenda, for lack of a better way of explaining it, because I really wanted to be there to report the news. I wanted to help people. And so I kind of got a little bit turned off by the whole if it bleeds, it leads thing, which was kind of really the case. I'm dating myself a little bit, but, you know, I was in college in the early 2000s. So for that reason, you know, it was just a little bit too much sensationalism for me. And so one thing I've always really liked is, for example, the BBC model, you know, just making sure it's just the facts. And unfortunately, the American media has a lot more drama in it sometimes than I was willing to be a part of. And so for that reason, I decided that I was going to change my major. And I actually went into archaeology and linguistics.
Wonderful.
So my specialty is Greek and Roman archaeology. So I had the opportunity to do all kinds of digs and everything else and travel to Europe and be a part of that. And that was absolutely fantastic. And I loved it. And I taught at the university for about probably 3 to 4 years while I was finishing my first master's degree, which was great. But, you know, essentially, and in fact, it was very, very funny because I actually met Morgana through Naomi Busquila, actually. And Naomi and I had met because she was actually trying to figure out how she was going to plan out a book. And we did some work together, just basically, you know, talking about things and, you know, planning, that kind of thing. And she was like, I have someone that you have to meet because you guys have such an interesting background. Morgana McCabe's background is actually Morgana McCabe Allen's background is actually as well in archaeology. So the second that she and I met, we had so many things to talk about. Yeah, exactly. And it just kind of started, you know, we basically came up with a list of about 10 to 12 projects that we wanted to work on together. And the same thing kind of happened when I met Kirsty as well. You know, it was just kind of an instant connection in terms of we had 10 or 12 projects that we needed to work on together pretty much right away. And so it was just this really natural fusion, which was phenomenal because I had so much in common with Kirsty, but I also had so much in common with Morgana, kind of like from different points in my life, if that makes any sense. But it was just pretty amazing to make those connections and then realize that, you know, they both had projects that they wanted to get done, but were having a really hard time getting them out. And so I was kind of able to help them kind of circle back and come up with a plan and basically work towards getting those made. So it was a really, really wonderful connection. And it's been very life transformative for me in terms of making new friends and then also connecting with people on a super intellectual level, which has been great. I've been a ghostwriter for a very, very long time. And in that process of being a ghostwriter, I've worked with a lot of very, very popular authors, and I've ghostwritten many of their books. And you know, the thing is that it's this process, but it's not, you know, the natural process, if that makes any sense, because people are like, I need a book on this.
Ghostwriting is not a natural process, or
well,
I
would say that ghostwriting is not the natural process that you have when you're collaborating with someone. And the reason that there's a really big difference between that is because when you're a ghostwriter, people tell you what they want, and that's primarily it. It's not a dialogue. So there's not that same level of creative fusion. You're simply kind of producing this final product. And then, you know, it's kind of sad because it's almost like having a baby and then letting a baby go, if that makes any sense. It's almost like, which is kind of sad because, you know, you create this beautiful thing, but at the end, you know, it's over and you have no connection to it. So it's almost like kind of putting a baby up for adoption, if that makes any sense. And, you know, the real challenge with that is that I love ghostwriting because it's fun, but I really kind of feel like from a personal perspective that it was really time for me to stop, you know, doing so much ghostwriting and instead really focus on doing work that I knew that was going to be transformative to the world, but also still be attached to it. And so that's something that Morgana has, you know, really helped me with, is kind of setting all of that up and then still being, you know, really attached to my own work. I've published 17 books in my own name, and I have ghostwritten about 150 in about the past 5 years. And then I also have a pen name, which I will not share, which I've published about 50 books under as well.
Oh, brilliant. I'm so glad that you have this skill, you recognize it, and you bring it to the world, because many people just get arrested at the skill point and then just don't go, I'm going to use this to make things much, much bigger. I'm loving what you're saying about ghostwriting. It feels like, so my partner's a tribute artist, and there's always this tension between being his
Yes.
own artist and playing the best version of the tribute that he can be. Does ghostwriting feel like that? Does it?
It does. It really, really does. You know, kind of one of the biggest, I guess, one of the biggest benefits that I have of having a background in journalism is that, you know, you in journalism school, you really learn to kind of mimic the style that's going to be required of, you know, anything, if that makes any sense. Very much like a tribute artist. You know, you learned the tone, you learned the pitch, you learn the way that you have to explain things to sound like the person that you are trying to make sure that you offer their voice 100%. You know, it's basically like becoming the mouthpiece of the other person, if that makes any sense. It's almost like transforming yourself into that other person. So trying to make sure, in a way, it's like acting, trying to ensure that you are providing that authentic experience for the person who is consuming that content. And yet at the same time, you feel a little bit of yourself bleeding over into it. And I know one thing that I've always done is put, you know, my own text and their text to make sure that I've looked at all of the word choice and ensure that it's going to be authentic and that I'm conveying something. And typically in that formatting as well, if I'm working with, you know, a client that I'm ghostwriting for, they will sign off on every chapter. And part of what they do is if there's anything that, you know, doesn't feel like them, they will essentially let me know, and we'll go back and fix that kind of in the middle of the process. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy ghostwriting because I feel like I've gotten to have a really, really wide range of experience with some of the things that I've ghostwritten. I've ghostwritten for doctors, I've ghostwritten for lawyers, I've ghostwritten for celebrities. I've had, you know, a lot of amazing experience because I've gotten to do that. But I'm still also very excited at the same time to be kind of focusing more on my own work.
So was this need to be focusing on yourself, which sounds like it was always there as a driver because of your poetry. Poetry is extremely personal
It is.
and emotional, and it's an interpretation of the world as you see it. You are an artist creating a view that you're hoping is both provocative and evocative through poetry. So to be doing that at night,
Yes.
there is obviously an innate sense of personal drive there to put out your own work in the world. But like with the ghostwriting, did you feel a sense of loss and then coming back when you met Morgana and Kirsty, or did you feel like it was always there, but they just
It was,
sparked whatever it was?
yeah, it was really always there. It was just kind of in the background, if that makes any sense. I think we all sometimes get a little bit too busy with life, if that makes any sense. We just kind of get weeded with, you know, trying to handle our daily responsibilities and doing that kind of thing. And I've been, you know, in addition to that, I've been a consultant for about 15 years as well. And as a
What is
consultant,
your
you know,
consultancy major? What do you consult in?
I do 2 or 3 different things, and I'm trying to focus more, you know, all exclusively on the writing, but I also do tech consultancy as well as branding and marketing consultancy. So I'm trying to focus, you know, moving away from the tech, if that makes any sense, and focusing essentially directly on branding, PR, voice, writing, and definitely trying to get away from the tech. I love tech. You know, I think that tech is a tool, if that makes any sense, to make our lives much, much easier. So for example, in this past week, I was actually working on a technology COVID-19 implementation that allows people to essentially utilize complete virtual doctor visits, and also that created support lines for all US 50 states for
Amazing.
people to reach out and reach a real person if they thought that they essentially had symptoms. You know, and so I was very, very honored to be a part of that project because I feel like I'm really making a contribution to the betterment of society. At the same time, I also kind of want to focus on that kind of higher level work, if that makes any sense, and that life transformative work. And I think that that is really more in the writing side and the consulting side of things for me than it is in the tech consulting, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it feels like a very holistic approach, you know,
Yes.
and the sense that I definitely got from reading about you was that you are a polymath, and you know, polymaths change the world. They look at things not just from one angle; they look at it from all sorts of angles, and they're able to dip in and out. And it's inspiring to hear you focus more on what you need and what you think is the real inspirer, because you'll bring to that everything you brought to the table, and that's really exciting to hear, really. I wanted to ask about, I know it's a
Sure.
digression, so I'm sorry, but I wanted to ask about the process of writing a book, because this is something you've got extensive experience in. And it's really interesting when you're talking about kind of branding, marketing. This is almost a full end service for anybody who wants to. And particularly, there's a lot of coaches on the creative personal development group, so maybe they would want to break and don't give away the money by telling us exactly how the process works. But I mean, how, what kind of stages do you go through? I always imagined it's like a PhD, but I'm not certain.
Well, I am actually finishing my PhD. My PhD will be finished in December, so I'm
How
very excited about that.
Tell me
I've
your
been working
PhD
on
title.
My PhD title is actually International Business and Digital Marketing Transformation. So I'm very, very excited to be, kind of at that level. I have 2 master's degrees as well as 3 undergraduate degrees, and my master's degrees are in digital transformation and international business as well as global leadership. And then, of course, linguistics and archaeology is my other master's degree. So I'm very excited to finally be done with my PhD. I've been working on it since 2012. So it's been a long process. I've had to stop and start multiple times just because my ex-husband unfortunately had really, really bad cancer issues. And so for that reason, I had to kind of pause things a little bit at a time, if that makes sense, while I was working, and then stop and take care of him for a little while and then restart and that kind of thing. So I'm very happy that I'll, finally be able to finish that process. So December is right around the corner.
It is right around the corner. So have you had your Viva and everything?
So very excited.
Goodness, that is really close. So it's December when you pick up the piece of paper that says, I am Dr.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that's fabulous. How exciting. We'll have a little, if we're still in isolation, we'll have a little Zoom party for you. Or we might have one anyway, seeing as we're all on the other side of the world. So
that'll be great. Well, I hope we won't still be in isolation, quite then. And I'm hoping to come back to the UK again very soon because I love the UK. I've been there so many times. And my only challenge is every time I leave is that I don't want to go. I still have so much family. I have a lot of family in the UK. My family has been in the States for about 200 years, but we still have a lot of family in the UK. So there you go.
So I will digress because I want to come back to the process thing, but where in the UK would you settle if you?
That's really challenging. I've actually been considering that quite a bit. And of course, London is definitely a consideration, but I've also been looking into Scotland because I have a lot of family in Scotland too. So my family background is actually Cherokee, English, and Scottish. And so for that reason, it seems like a good fit. And of course, with all the fun and crazy things going on in the States right now, Morgana said it to me in, I think, probably the best way. She said, do you realize you might be on the wrong side of the ocean? And I said, you know what? I've really been giving that some serious consideration for about the past 3 or 4 years now. So there you go.
It's so interesting how cultural heritage pulls us in different directions.
Yes.
It really is.
It definitely does.
Yeah. So my family originates from Goa. They are second generation, half Indian, half Portuguese. And my mum has a strain of English in her family, and we grew up in Hong Kong. And I can't tell you the cultural pulls that gives me is crazy. I don't know how I've ended up in England. I actually said to Jim this morning, do you know what? We should live somewhere warm. I'm really feeling like we should live somewhere warm.
Well, it's very warm here in Florida where I am right now. It's about 42 degrees Celsius, and it has been all winter long. It has been sunny like every day. We've had no rain. I just keep hoping that it's going to rain. It rained yesterday for the first time in like a month, and I was like, thank God it hasn't forgotten how to rain. It makes you wonder sometimes, but it's very nice here in Florida. I live about a mile from the beach, and that's very, very nice.
Do you use the beach a lot for thinking?
I walk on the beach, yes, and I plan writing and things like that on the beach. There's just something about the beach and the sound of the waves that is just very reaffirming, and also really good for, just having a quiet afternoon or a quiet moment of reflection. So I try to go in the morning and I try to go in the evening as well and walk on the beach because it's very healthy, but it's also just, a great place to de-stress.
Yeah, definitely. What other things do you do to inspire and make time for thinking?
I do a lot of meditation. That's something that I am a very, very firm believer in, is a lot of meditation. And I do a lot of, just journaling and writing and things like that. I spend quite a bit of time doing that each individual day. I'm definitely a member of the 5 a.m. club, and I do follow Robin Sharma's model pretty religiously because I am just such a fan of his, and he is just such a wonderful person. Have you ever read The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari? I wasn't sure if you'd ever read that particular
book. No, it's on my read list. Tell me about it.
It should be at the top of your read list. And the reason I say that is because, he was a corporate lawyer for many, many years. And then he became a defense attorney in the US. So basically, in the US, people look to lawyers as kind of like the highest echelon of possible pay and the position that everyone wants. He actually was making like $600,000 a year. Wow. And he had a brand new Ferrari. and he was living in Beverly Hills. And I mean, we're talking about the time he was like 25, 26 years old. So pretty, he basically hit the highest echelon that you possibly can in the US. And he decided that he was not fulfilling his life mission, and he gave it all up and went, into, basically almost in the footsteps of a guru. And I mean, he's just so amazing. I love Robin Sharma. But the thing that I really, really love about him is that he, basically gave up capitalism and followed his own true path. And I think that that is so mission critical. So part of, what I have done over the years as a writer and an author is search out people who have stories to tell and then tell their stories. And, sometimes that's led to ghostwriting. Sometimes that's led to me putting my name on books when people had challenging stories that they were afraid to tell or couldn't tell on their own, if that makes any sense. And, there are so many stories out there like that, where there are people who have an important story that needs to be, I kind of feel like it's our moral obligation, for lack of a better word, to tell these stories that other people don't have the ability and the connections to tell.
Yeah.
So that's always been something that has been mission critical to what I've wanted to do as a journalist and also as a writer, is to ensure that if there was a story that was going to change someone's life, make their life better, that I find a way to share that with the world.
Amazing.
So that's been kind of my life work so far, if that makes any sense. And that's what I'm trying to continue to do. I'm trying to, push it a lot more into creating a one-stop solution, essentially. Basically, part of what I'm working on, and I do own a publishing company as well, so part of what I'm working on is trying to essentially provide a one-stop shop for people that otherwise wouldn't be able to have their stories told, and then also helping them to find the connections to actually have them made into movies as well. So I'm trying to basically create that entire turnkey service and ensure that people have the ability to have PR as well as marketing, movies, everything else, and really get these stories told. Because I think, I started doing a lot of work with, Hollywood in around probably 2008. And the really big challenge with that is that people don't really have a clear path, if that makes any sense. It's really, particularly in the US, it's extremely, I'll just say, winding and complex in order to meet the right connections and find people to help you and really get someone to pay attention. And I think that, it's mission critical to provide a space where someone who might not be very good dealing with people but has an amazing story to tell is able to essentially get that done. And there's so much business that is a part of that process that if you haven't been a part of that business process is foreign and very difficult, for lack of a better word.
And also, it's about skill sets, isn't it? Like you were
is.
saying, if you're a person that does have a story,
Mhm.
the ability to tell that story, the connections to tell that story,
Yes.
the way to not be ripped off in that environment.
Oh, yes. And
people spend lifetimes learning these things that you have extensive experience in. So that's,
well, you just said something that really pained me that I have to jump in here just for 1 second. Not get ripped off. That is such a huge part of the process, because people lose their rights. People don't understand what's in some of these contracts. People don't, have an advocate who can help them with that process. I know when I first created, one of my most important works, it was a book that I was working on that was called My Truth. And that particular book was a true story of a gentleman who I had worked with in Mexico, who was falsely accused of a murder that he didn't commit. And the young lady that he supposedly murdered was the daughter of a U.S. senator of Washington State. And essentially, I created the screenplay for it after we wrote the book. And, we started shopping it around, and people were literally trying to change the storyline. And I mean, the thing is that there was one production company that we were just about to sign with, and it was a very large production company. And I can't say any more than that because I would be, messing with my NDA. But essentially, they wanted to have his character have a relationship context with this young woman that he had never met. And it's a true story. You can't do things like that, I mean, the thing is that this man had spent, 30 years essentially being tortured by this particular experience. And he had been, completely acquitted of all the charges, but just the impact that this false, allegation had on his entire life. I mean, it had derailed his entire life. And so we wanted to make sure that people were aware
Yeah.
of what that can look like. But the whole process of trying to navigate and finding the right home for the movie and the screenplay and everything else it was daunting, it was crazy, and I had a lot of really great connections which helped me to navigate that process. But at the same time, what I've tried to do is make sure that that doesn't happen to anyone else, because they wanted, like, I think they were going to take like probably 90% of all the royalties. And the thing is that this is someone's true story, this is someone's suffering. And I mean, the thing is that having some of that profit back would have helped his family recover, because I mean, his family was a very affluent family in Mexico, but they had actually gone through the entire process of losing their home, losing all of their family wealth, trying to extract him from this situation because the government was so corrupt. And I mean, he was in prison in a federal penitentiary where they were torturing him every day for 3 years. And I mean, the kind of physical challenges and the kind of mental abuse and things like that that someone undergoes, I mean, it's life altering. And I mean, even 30 years later, he was still having even physical reactions from the things that had been done to him. And so what I'm saying is, in that kind of a situation, it's mission critical that you're able to help the family be able to recover a good profit in telling that story. And so I was glad that we were able to do that, but it was a really big challenge trying to kind of sort out all of these moving pieces, if that makes sense. And so what I've been trying to do since then is, from that learning experience and from all of the different works that I've been a part of now, is I've been trying to create a streamlined path to help point people in the right direction so that they don't have to go through all those trials and tribulations of just trying to get something done, because it's really challenging sometimes.
That sounds absolutely amazing, and it's wonderful that integrity is the driving factor behind that. Because there's a lot of people that will say that, but it's evident from the way that you're speaking that that is one of the values that drives you to do this. How do those people find you, and how do you find those people?
Well, this particular, usually it's odd. Like, I really believe in synergy. I really believe that we meet people, on our path when we're supposed to meet them. And that, I am a complete believer in that. But actually, this particular way that this gentleman met me, I was working, as I mentioned, I worked in tech for a very, very long time, and I've done international implementations all over the world. And we were working in a very small town in Mexico, and this gentleman was actually on my project. And the company that I was working for messed up and sent all of our equipment to the wrong city in Mexico, like 700 miles away. So we had to rent basically like a budget rent-a truck, one of these small trucks for moving. And we had to drive to the other side of Mexico, 700 miles away, and retrieve the equipment. And then we still came back, and we still didn't have all of the equipment that we needed, because it was a soccer stadium, actually a football stadium. Los Laguneros, which is in Torreon, Mexico. And they had just built a brand new soccer or football stadium, and they were essentially trying to, get everything going. So we were there to put in, the menu boards, the cash registers, all of the tech and the operation system, the sound systems, all of that. And so we were missing all of these pieces of equipment. So we're having to go over here and then go over there and that kind of thing and retrieve all of these pieces of equipment. We still did make the go live, but we basically, for like 2 weeks while we were sitting there, I mean, there was nothing to do. I mean, we're talking about a middle of the desert kind of place where, there was no internet, there was no cable, there wasn't a way to really watch TV or anything. So what happens when you're in that kind of a situation? You start talking to people, right? Because there's nothing else to do. So our group started talking, and I learned about his story. And, I had actually been in a brief period of like writer's block right before that. And, it really kind of helped me get beyond my writer's block, because I had an important story to tell. And I would say that that's kind of one of those most critical moments of my career in terms of, getting writing again, because I had stopped writing for about 6 months, and I had stopped writing because I was really, really burnt out. I was traveling 100%, and I was traveling internationally. And so I would be in 3 or 4 different countries a week, sometimes 4 or 5 different states in the US in a day. And so I was just really, really, really tired and burnt out. And I needed, a little bit of time to kind of reconnect with my purpose and realize that it wasn't just traveling around and, crawling around in stadiums and installing all of this tech. I needed to really reconnect with what my purpose was again. And that really gave me the purpose to kind of reset and realize that this was part of, what was going to be my life's work. And that was a really critical kind of change for me, because I had always been on that path. And then I got kind of waylaid, if that makes any sense, just from being, way too heads down and being just so focused on work that I wasn't actually doing the work that I needed to be. I was doing the work that I needed to be doing to pay the bills, which was really a big challenge.
And it's so funny because I'm hearing the parallels between this experience, and I think it's amazing that it came to you, because it came to you. Had there not been the incident of everything being 700 miles away,
yes,
this wouldn't have happened to you. The universe looked at you and said, you need a pause. Yeah. And they gave it to you in the form of what seemed like crisis.
Yes.
But then it's how you view that anxiety. And, even situations like we're all in at the moment, it's not so much how you view that anxiety. It's about giving us the time to have conversations that open up different serendipities and possibilities.
Agreed.
That we hadn't looked at before. So wonderful. My goodness, the story of my truth through chance encounter. I really love that. I really love that.
I think everything is a matter of chance encounters, really, when you think about it, because life, it's really, really silly because there are some people who believe in predestination. I do think that we all, I don't believe in predestination. I believe that we meet people when we're supposed to meet them along our path, but how that happens, I don't think is predestined. I don't think, I think that there is a higher plan for all of us from whatever the source is, whatever name you want to give that, essentially. But I do believe we're all here to fulfill our life's work and our life's mission. And sometimes, we can run away from that, we can hide from that, but it does eventually find its way back to us. Mm-hmm. Kind of as you were saying, because things happen all the time. I've met so many people along the journey of my career that I've been able to help and that I've been able to work with. And they've all happened by, random introductions or, just meeting the right person at the right time and realizing, whoa, I need to tell that story. And that's been, essentially what has guided me throughout my career.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because it resonates really strongly with the principles of the yes place of this channel, which is that you say yes, you open up conversations by actively listening, saying yes, and seeing what that strikes within you to see how you want to move forward with it. And
absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, so with If, you're 3 months in.
Yes.
And so when do you think you'll get to publication?
I think we'll probably have it ready for publication in about probably 90 to 120 days at the latest. I'm actually working with Kirsty.
Quick.
Well, I'm trying to push it up faster. And the reason that I am is because I really, really think that this is something that's really going to help people. And, I really just believe that it has to come out as soon as possible. Because I think that, part of us having this time in quarantine is, like you said, it's really made us kind of think about what's really important and kind of take a new perspective on things. And I really kind of feel like with that knowledge, if we can put a tool like If in people's hands, essentially before quarantine ends or right at the end of quarantine, that it's going to provide a lot of people a springboard to utilize some of their reevaluations and really, really feel better about coming out of this difficult time, just essentially with a new perspective. And I think that that's super, super important. I mean, I know that everyone that I know has been affected by coronavirus in some way or another. I've seen a lot of people I knew pass away, unfortunately. I've seen about 50 people that I knew in the, and I have a very large network, between, the US, the UK, Latin America, kind of all the places that I've traveled. I've seen about 50 people that I know die in the past, 2 months. And it's been, really kind of odd, because when I say odd, I mean people from the age of 25 to 45, and people who are older, of course. But, I think a big mistake that people make about COVID-19 is they think that it's an older person's disease. They think if they are young, that they are bulletproof and that they're going to be able to recover and it's not going to be a problem. So I don't need to take any precautions. And it has proven through, just the news and, of course, just from my own experience, from what I've seen, that the majority of the people that I've known that have passed away have been younger, between 25 and 45. And I think that really shows that we really need to pay attention.
It really does. It really does. Is the work that you're doing on the tech project that you've been working on, is that going to help with that, do you think?
Yes, I do. And the reason I really feel good about the work that I've been doing on it, and I have been, really, really burning the candle at both ends, I will not lie. I put in 158 hours in the past 2 weeks related to
Oh
that
my
project,
goodness.
and 107 the 2 weeks before that. So it's been a lot of time, but I think it's really going to help people. And the reason for that is because instead of having to go anywhere, and instead of having to, essentially go to an emergency room, it allows for people to connect with a doctor or with a medical professional remotely. It allows for them to essentially instantaneously have the support that they need so that they can determine, do I need to go get a test? Do I need to go to a hospital? What is it that I need to do? Because they're able to reach a real person on the other end of the phone right away, or through video chat or anything else pretty much
Brilliant.
immediately.
Has
And I
it
think,
launched already?
yes, it has already launched.
What's it called? Do you mind saying?
No, it's called Hypnosis. It's a really, really amazing platform, and I'm just happy to have been a part of the implementation of it. It's going to
Brilliant.
be live in all 50 states in about 3 days. It's live right now in about 40. So
Brilliant.
we don't have good, well, we have good healthcare here in the US, but it's very expensive and it's not very cohesive in terms of, people being able to have access to all of the information that they need, because there's so much privatization. And so the thing that I love about this platform is that it has all of the electronic health records of the person in one database. So it doesn't matter who your insurance provider is, all that background, all that information is right there and can be seen instantly. And, basically in most of the states, the services are also free, which I think is extremely important, because there are so many people right now who have been affected by, unemployment and everything else. I know here in Florida, they've said that 1/8 of the population now is unemployed. And in addition to that, we've seen, like, in the last 2 weeks here in the States, now keep in mind that the population of the US is probably about 360 million. We've seen 65 million people file for unemployment here in the past, month and a half. And the problem with that is that most of those health benefits come from employers. So people are also, in a time of a world pandemic, losing their health insurance, which is a really big problem.
Definitely, definitely. So it's really important that those services are free. And what we have over here in the UK, the luck, the joy, the facility, whatever way we can construct it. I mean, it's not an accident that we have free healthcare. It's very much paid for by all of the taxpayers and everybody that puts into the system. And of course, by Major Tom, who's been walking on his Zimmer frame. But I don't know if you followed that story.
Yes, I have been. I have been, absolutely.
Yeah. But we don't have integrated healthcare records. So really, we need you. We need you over here. That's your ticket to the UK for wherever you decide to settle, be it London or otherwise, is that it'd be wonderful to have that integration over here. And it's been tried many times. And it's, for you to be able to achieve it over there is mammoth and spectacular. And you must be so proud.
Oh, well, thank you. President Obama, in his infinite wisdom, before he left office, passed a law here in the US. He was trying to actually achieve nationalized healthcare, is what he was trying to achieve. Because, basically of every dollar that is made here in the US, 43 cents of it goes to taxes. And the thing is that 43 cents that goes to taxes is not being properly allocated in terms of infrastructure. I know, for example, I lived in Italy for a while, and I was super impressed. And I do speak Italian, so it was a lot of fun for me. I had a great time with it. And I love Italy. I've always said, if I knew what heaven on earth looked like, it would look like Italy. Italy is just so amazing and beautiful. But essentially, getting back to the point at hand, I was so impressed with the colleges. I was so impressed with the healthcare and the infrastructure and everything else. And, President Obama tried to do essentially the exact same thing here. And Italy is paying like 38 cents of every dollar. And in Canada, they have the same, system, and they're paying 40 cents, so we're actually paying more, and we don't have the same benefits. We don't have the college assistance. We don't have any of that. And so here, the average student in the US, when they end up, going to college, spends $250,000, and they graduate with a debt of $250,000. Then they start with a job that pays $40,000. So between, the college debt and then also the medical debt, that is another problem. The number one cause of, someone going bankrupt here in the US is medical debt. And I had a friend who essentially, he had brain, bone, and lung cancer, and he was in the hospital for 30 days. His bill was $2 million.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it was so intense that he actually renounced his US citizenship and moved to Thailand. And the reason that he did that was because he knew that in the course of his lifetime that there would be no way that he would ever be able to repay that $2 million.
Yeah.
Now, usually there are programs, for example, that healthcare providers will work with you on that. And what I mean by that is they'll allow for you to do an income-based repayment plan. But at the same time, just think about knowing that you owed someone $2 million. The level of stress that is involved with that it's insane. I mean, there's just no way of looking at it. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So essentially, we need some major reform here. So I'm happy to be a part of anything that I can do to reform the system. And I know that part of what President Obama did, which was wonderful, is make it mandatory that we had EHR. And so electronic health records mean that there's one database that essentially every hospital in the entire country is hooked up to, and every single person's medical records. If you've been to, a doctor in the past 10 years, anywhere in the US, you have a record. And
Amazing.
People are able to find it and be able to essentially deal with, whatever problems, allergies, anything else. And that can be the difference between life and death.
Yeah.
If you arrive at a hospital, and you're unconscious and they can't talk to you, if they realize that you have a particular allergy, that can be the difference of life and death. So I think that it's important work. And I've been working essentially, with, different consulting firms since about 2014, implementing those electronic health records kind of as one of my consulting gigs. So
Brilliant.
Very excited to see that.
Brilliant. Oh, well, we look forward to it. Remind us of the name again.
Okay, it's called Hypnosis. Is
Hypnosis.
the actual
If anyone
name.
watching
Yes.
this in the US, please have a look out for Hypnosis.
Awesome. Well, it's a fantastic, platform that's been, in the works for the past 10 years. So I'm so happy that it's live now in the time of COVID-19.
Yeah, you must be. That's amazing. That's amazing. And then you've got books on the horizon. You've got If.
Yes.
Are we allowed to talk about your collaboration with Morgana yet, or is that still embryonic?
Yes. I think it's definitely not embryonic. We're about halfway through the book.
Brilliant.
So I think we can start talking about it a little bit. One thing that I really love about working with Morgana is, again, she and I have the same background in archaeology, which is amazing. And so part of what we've been able to do is really pull a lot of work together that she did both for her PhD and then also from an archaeological perspective, and pull that in essentially as well with the psychology piece of things, as well as, cognitive behavioral therapy. So we've kind of been able to pull all that together. Plus there's a little bit of woo-woo in there. Of course, there's some journaling, there's some meditation, that kind of thing. So I am really in love with it because it is basically about finding your life's purpose and really kind of removing those blockages that are keeping you from being able to get to the next level of achievement.
Oh, limiting beliefs. Love those.
Yes. Well, I think we all have them, right? I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter how many letters you have after your name. It doesn't matter how many bestsellers you have. I think that we all get to the point that we suffer from imposter syndrome, just a little bit, right? I mean, we all have these days where we're like, I am just really dumb and I have no idea what I'm doing. And we all know that that's not the case. But I think that we all just get knocked down occasionally by life. It could be a bill or a divorce or, whatever that particular issue is. I think that we all find ourselves, just kind of in that moment feeling limited. And then we kind of get stuck essentially in a rut. And we spend that time, kind of trying to recover from that. And the thing that I really love about Morgana's work is it really personally relates to my personal path. Particularly because, basically she was like, we all have these moments in life where we are brought into contact with our calling and we know that we should be answering the call. And essentially we don't answer the call because of whatever, garbage excuse we come up with.
Or
we
the
think,
white noise that's going on in our lives at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's, oh, I'm sorry, I'm too busy with my job, or, oh, I'm working on this, or I'm working on that, or I'm too busy with my kids, or I'm too busy with my relationship, or whatever it is. We are all brought into this same situation over and over and over. And sometimes it'll happen 3 or 4 times in your life. And, you're basically 5 years later, you're going, I should have answered that prior call. Oh my goodness, and then that's where you find that you've, made the mistake and missed the bus. And then you're looking back on things, waiting for that next time that opportunity opens the door and you don't want to miss that call again. And so the thing that I really love about what we're doing is we're really creating a guide, that will help people understand where those limiting beliefs come from, as well as those blockages, that is going to ensure that when the call comes, no one misses it again. And I really, really love that because
I love that. What I love about your description as well is this kind of, you see it, you recognize the thing, it's the thing, it's the thing at the time. And you kind of go, oh, well, all this sort of stuff. And sometimes, like in the case of one of my things that I still have not forgiven myself for, and I must forgive myself for it, it was a case of, oh, look, let's do some of the hard work towards making this thing happen. Oh, that's too difficult.
Oh, yes,
and totally
that's
let
the
it
worst.
pass. And now 10 years on, I'm like, I should have done the thing. I should have done the thing. And so I'm there, like, when's the thing going to happen again? And of course, if I'm looking at life that way, it's not going to happen.
No.
Start and make connections. And it's really pertinent. Well, for me anyway, but I mean, I think a lot of people feel they've missed the bus. And then there's these horrible narratives that we get from popular media, like opportunity only knocks once. No, it doesn't. Opportunity knocks 10 times a day.
It does.
Your perception filter as to how you say yes to things. So yeah, I love it.
I think that's a perfect, description, essentially, because it does knock 10 times a day. And sometimes they're little knocks, and sometimes they are really large ones that you can't ignore, but at the same time, I think sometimes the little knocks actually provide the most value. And the reason that I say that is I believe that sometimes the littler knocks, like for example, some of the books that I've worked on where it was an individual who had a great story to tell, but they didn't have, any monetary way to compensate me or things like that. I have taken completely pro bono work because it was a story that was, too important to tell. And so I know one thing that I've always done with my clients is have a sliding scale. And what I mean by that is that, if I'm working with a huge corporate client, they're going to be charged in a completely different way than if I'm working with an entrepreneur or an individual or anything else. And for me, it's always been kind of a matter of moral obligation to make sure that I was helping people who needed the help and also not allowing for, a price tag to be a hindrance to that. So I've always tried to make that very affordable to people who needed the assistance with that. And the challenge with that is I think too, that we need to also provide value for our work, but I think that and get paid for the work that we do, because that's mission critical too, particularly, I think sometimes as women, we always have this, feeling of guilt that's associated with money, if that makes any sense, where we're kind of in a place where we feel bad for charging for our services, even though our services are definitely worth being paid for. And so I think that it's really kind of I would say, big challenge to make sure that you are charging the right amount to the correct clients, but also realizing sometimes that pro bono work is kind of like, a tab that we pay the universe, for lack of a better way of explaining it, because sometimes it's worth being able to help someone and really know that you're, making a huge change, not only for that person, but also by producing that piece of work and getting it out there. Because I think that sometimes that is, the payment, if that makes any sense, is good karma.
It's particularly hard judging what to charge, who to charge, how much to charge when you're driven by values of world improvement. Mm-hmm. Or if you're driven by values of creativity. There's that great book, Artists Don't Starve. I think it's Jeff Goins, I can't remember. But it's about how also not just being a woman, being a creative, you feel it's very difficult to put a value to your work without people, those of us who are able to ideate and then kind of divergently think and then bring innovation very quickly to a situation that has value within itself. And
yes, it does.
Have people know how to monetize that. And it sounds like we need to. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's a skill that, quite frankly, we probably all need Morgana for, because she is so fantastic at explaining, kind of looking at, increasing your worth and your value, but also understanding your pricing model. I know that was one thing that she and I worked on personally that was just phenomenal, because, sometimes she was giving me a little guilt because she was like, do you realize how much you've been undercharging for about the past 10 years? And I was like, yes, I do realize that. And, I also realized that in thinking that sometimes that I had been undercharging, and doing it in the right way, I had been doing it in the wrong way. And, essentially, I realized that I could have stopped doing some of my tech consulting, 5 or 6 years ago, if I had been focusing more on, charging appropriate prices. And she actually broke it down for me one day, just in all the math. And I was like, wow, I really needed someone to show me the big picture there. Thank you so much. Yeah. Because, realizing that would allow me to kind of phase out, a little bit more of the white noise and the things that I don't want to be doing for the actual life transformative work, which I do want to be doing. We only have so much time that we're given. We only have so many days. And the thing about life is that we never know when it's going to come to an end. And I think that COVID-19 has really, really taught us that. And I think the real challenge is that, you know, we keep putting things off until tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, and we don't know how many tomorrows we have.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that is a beautiful place, an inspiring place, I think, to bring this interview for the moment to a close, because I could talk to you all day.
I've enjoyed talking to you too. I could do the same.
I'm like, must ask about this, must ask about that. But why don't we save that for our next get together, because that would be wonderful.
That would be great.
So I'm going to stop recording. I'm going to say
Sure.
thank you and ask you to stay on the line for a few minutes afterwards, because I'd love to just pick your brains about some things. And I'm
Sounds
sure
great.
everybody who watches this video will also love to pick your brains about things. Key learnings. What have I learned? I have learned there's a fantastic book called If coming out. There is another fantastic book which has no name. What's the one you're working with Morgana with?
We're still working on it. Right. The tentative name is The Journey. We still are working with names, so it could change, but that's the tentative name right now.
Brilliant. So we've got If, which is about ironic fundamentalism. And if you missed what that was about, then rewind and watch the beginning of this interview properly from start to finish. And then we've got The Journey, which is about recognizing your path when it comes to you. We have a recommendation for Robin Schwammer's Monk Who
The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, say that again.
The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. It's a life-changing book.
Ferrari, which is really wonderful.
So
and
wonderful.
Then we've got all of this beautiful journey of consultancy that Melissa does, which is about amplifying stories, which is what, again, the S Space does. Amplifying stories that are really important, that inspire others to make change, and helping those people who tell those stories to get them out there, get them published, and hopefully get them onto the big screen so that people who can consume them in different ways and learn from them and make the world a better place. So thank you, Melissa, for making the world a better place, and thank you for being a part of the Yes Space and talking to me today.
It was
is there
wonderful.
anything else you want to say to creative personal development before we zip up?
Just one thing, and that is that I have a new children's book which is coming out next week.
Excellent. What's it called?
It's called Molly McCreary, There's Something in the Forest.
Brilliant. Do we get a sneaky peek of what she might find in the forest, or do we have to buy to find out?
I'll let everyone check it out on their own. How about that?
Brilliant.
It's a lot of fun, though. I think you'll enjoy it.
Fantastic. Molly McCreary. Love it. Brilliant. Thank you very much for today.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah. I'm going to say goodbye, but I'm only going to hit stop record for now. Yes. Okay. Bye to everyone in creative personal development, and see you soon with the next interview.